Anime Declassified is a podcast run by the Anime Secrets website. Check us out at animesecrets.org for more anime, video game, tokusatsu content. Remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts today.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anime Declassified, hosted by animesecrets.org. I'm your host, Rizwan Merchant, and today we're doing something a little bit different. So, this past weekend was Comicpalooza 2023 here in Houston, Texas, and I was able to attend for the Saturday, and I was invited to sit in on a panel hosted by a new friend of mine, James, of the NerdCon convention over in Mount Bellevue, Texas, later this year, October 21st, 2023. So I decided to join the panel. The panel is on Toy Universe and the active play and the storytelling behind it. What you're going to hear in the rest of this podcast is the live audio from that panel. If you're interested, this is a really cool panel. I really recommend you guys all listen to it and check it out. And let's get into it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Toy Universe's at Play. We're so happy to have you join us here today. My name is Chris Chisholm. I am the facilitator of this particular discussion. I've got a great panel of expert guests over here. And what makes them all experts is that they were once kids who played with what? Toys! Guess what? That means that all of you are experts too. Let's run this around so you and Marie can share. Oh. All right, quit beating yourself up there.
I mean, it's
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
What if I want to?
Well, then there might be some clinical issues for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this panel. We're going to talk about all the stories and the universes that toys were created, and how they went about marketing and what we love, but we also want to hear from you. This panel is about you guys as well. So I'm going to ask questions of the crowd, and I'm going to invite you to be engaged in the process too, because everybody here loves toys, right? Yes. So again, I'm Chris Chisholm. I run a little group called NerdFest on Facebook. I'm also a vendor here at 1630. Our booth is called NerdFest Texas. And we have a lot of cool toys for both kids and collectors. And I run a small Comic-Con called NerdCon with this guy right here, Jerry Schaefer. I'm going to ask you guys to go down the line, introduce yourselves, and tell people about you.
All right, hi guys. My name is Jerry Schaefer. I am the co-director of NerdCon and I also direct another Comic-Con called the Eastern Room Funny Book and Vintage Con, which is focused on comics. I'm a teacher in the area, and I've been working to help elevate the ideas and concepts, as well as elevate literacy in kids' lives. So that's part of the things what we're doing here, and that we want to make sure that everybody gets and has a terrific time while we're having this particular panel. All right.
Hi, I'm Rizwan Merchant. I own animesecrets.org. It's a website that does a lot of convention coverage around the country. Also, with that website, we have 3 different podcasts. One for anime, one for tokusatsu, which is like Power Rangers, Japanese Power Rangers, Super Sentai, Kamen Rider. And we have a neat podcast that just launched this past month on May the 4th, because we wouldn't want to start a podcast on May 4th, called Jedi Squadron. So check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I got business cards after. But yeah, that's my speech.
May the 4th be with you.
I'm Marie. I just love all things nerdy, from toys to movies to pop culture, so I'm just here to share the fun.
Now, Marie is being very, very modest. Marie is one of the most awesome cosplayers out there, and she does this thing where she blends both Disney and Star Wars together with a great Snow White Jedi cosplay. Tell us who you're cosplaying today, Marie.
I'm the Little Mermaid.
She is the Little Mermaid. Do you believe that? That's awesome. All right, quick question for our panelists here. One of the questions we asked about yesterday was, what was it like for you as a kid? Just share something happy about childhood that really brought you and was unique about your generation. Don't go too in-depth in the toys, because we're going to pass this question and come back to the toys a little bit more. But what was unique about being a kid in your generation?
But for the fact that the toys and the media mixed together to create really an amazing connection to the pop culture. For instance, you had G.I. Joe that started off as a toy line first and became a comic, and then of course the TV show. And so those types of things really made my childhood in the 80s and 90s very special.
So for me, part of the thing I love about my childhood was that, so I grew up in the 90s primarily. I was born in 87. But my favorite part was just the cool toys we had when we were growing up. I mean, there's some cool toys now, but I think toys back then were just a different breed altogether. And I'm really excited to talk about that stuff.
So when I was in school and we had recess, before all the fun slides and merry-go-rounds were taken away, we liked to play Power Rangers, and it was always a fight over who got to be what color. So that was my fun memory.
What color were you typically? Were you tough enough to be the color you wanted? Were you the pink? Or were you the Pink Ranger? Is that who you wanted to be?
No. So my favorite color when I was little was yellow, but I played Power Rangers mostly with my little sister and my best friend. So I usually lost to both pink and yellow, and therefore I said I would be blue because Billy and I both wore glasses, and I thought that was cool.
All right. And finally, somebody thinks the Blue Ranger is cool. All right. What about you guys? Because we got a lot of different generations out here. No childhood traumas, please. This is not a therapy session, all right? But who wants to share? What's it like? How amazing was it for you being a kid, and what do you hold on to from that time?
Monster High, I think that really affected like my style and my hair, and honestly the way that I speak. It really boosts your confidence, and then the reboot was amazing.
Romantic. I love when toys are described as romantic. Thank you for sharing that. Marie, you want to share? What was it like for you as a kid growing up? What's some of the special memories you have? Remember, no childhood trauma, Marie. We do not have Maureen. We do not have that kind of time.
Saturday morning cartoons. My favorite is Batman the 91 series.
Saturday morning cartoons. She was here for the wrong panel. That was yesterday. Hey, anybody else want to share something you loved about being a kid in your generation? What's awesome about kids today?
I don't know.
Don't know. This is the I don't know generation. I love it. I love it. Who else had a hand up? All right, my man, tell me about being a kid in your generation.
You see, people are making toys out of video games, and so they also started making toys. So it's really interesting seeing Donkey Kong getting like possibly the worst show I've ever seen, but also making him relevant again. And I kind of miss that.
I love that. And video games really kind of took over that toy line. We'll kind of talk about that, but so many of the stories now are coming from video games. You guys growing up, what are the one or two toy lines that were so special to you? And let's start with Marie. Let's give Marie, Marie is so awesome. She should get to speak first.
Being a female, no, not that has much to do with anything, but the toys that I think I played with most were Cabbage Patch Kids and Barbie.
Cabbage Patch Kids and Barbies. Now, let's talk about both, because they have such a different because to me, if you're paying Cabbage Patch, it's more about mothering, but if you're Barbie, you're looking to be a career woman supermodel, am I right?
I just liked dressing them both up.
Oh, future cosplayer over here, for sure then. Cabbage Patch and Barbie, did you have a particular favorite Barbie?
I think my favorite was, I had two. One was a mall Teresa doll who was dressed in really trendy, weird 90s clothes, now that I think about it, but like you pushed a button and she'd be like, let's go shopping. And then there was a Skipper doll that had like a little dog, because she was like pet setter Skipper or something, like I'm not really sure, but she also had weird 90s, bright clothes, the frizzy hair, and a little puppy dog that I just thought was the cutest.
The cutest puppy dog. All right, that's a great answer. How about for you? Great toy line. And we're going to come back and talk a little Barbie and Cabbage Patch.
So, my favorite toy line growing up when I was a kid in the 90s was Power Rangers. I loved lifting those figures. I loved the Megazords, the transforming them together. Also, speaking of where Transformers were really cool when I was growing up. I really enjoyed collecting those, playing with them. I had like really unique storylines that would make for easy different things, crossovers and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's my relationship with that.
Jerry, my man, a couple of toy lines for you.
All right, so G.I. Joe for sure, because I don't know if any of you played with your G.I. Joes like I did, and I played the hell out of them. Like out in the creek, building the little forts and throwing the rocks. Oh no, the bombs are coming, and all my G.I. Joes ended up being torn up and everything broken on them, but they were the most fun. Also He-Man as well, because we did the same thing with them.
He-Man, lots of muscle men in tight little shorty shorts. Nice. All right, slinging around the muscular tones. For me, I started off Star Wars. I mean, even though they were a toy that came from an actual universe that was already established, loved Star Wars as a kid, morphed into G.I. Joe, Hot Wheels. I mean, Hot Wheels was the one that didn't have like a storyline, and we'll kind of talk about some of those as well, but I just love the cars, and I picture myself driving them. What about for you guys? Special toy lines. You already said Monster High. Anything else? What's that? My Little Pony. Yes. Any bronies in the house? Oh no, he put that hand down real quick. No, I am not a brony. I am not a brony. What about for you? Special toy line? She is getting shy. That's all right. My man, I'm going to come over here to you. What was your special 1 or 2 toy lines?
Spawn and the Shell Shocker.
Nice. Now, I love Spawn. Came from the Spawn comics. And they were really great toys because they kind of set the tone that toys could finally be dark. Right? Because toys, it was always about the hero, and the hero was always the good guy. And, right? And Spawn line came along and really made it okay for it to be dark.
Well, I think also because Todd McFarlane was able to really recreate a lot of really great toys and Kiss and all these great characters, and so he was able to really twist it in such a way that made it very, very popular and very spread out into the world in terms of how people looked at it, for sure.
One of the things we talk about, is they created, if you look at toys like in the 50s and stuff, not really as much as far as storyline that they give you. Like, here's a gun, here's a doll, right? This is what you do, right? But as you get into the 80s, they really start creating these universes. They built comic books and cartoons, and it's all this big marketing thing. And it's really driven to make the sales. And it was really brilliant. It was really brilliant the way it was done. But nobody had a storyline for a potato head. Let's be honest. So how much did those stories? Oh, go ahead, please.
I mean, when Toy Story came out in '96, you got a
okay. Potato Head was already about 40 years old at that point. Potato Head actually.
He persevered for 40 years.
That he did. How much did the stories, though, that they create, the cartoons, the commercials, the comic books, how much did they inspire your play? Did you watch the cartoon and say, I'm going to continue that story? Or were you like, yeah, that's out there, but this is my story?
As someone whose parents didn't particularly buy me the special marketed toys, I never had Power Rangers, despite the fact that I like them. I kind of did both with my Barbies and Cabbage Patch Kids. I would recreate the storylines from my favorite TV shows, and sometimes I would make them my own.
Did you get the knockoff, like the Power Strangers and toys like that? Every once in a while, we'd get like the
Dollar General Power Rangers.
Yeah, like the He-Man as opposed to He-Man.
I'm still just kind of shocked that I had actual Barbies, not like dollar store Barbies. But the downside, not the downside, my mom made all the clothes though for all of my dolls. So some of them got pretty creative.
That's awesome.
Unique fashion. I like that. And then here again, another example leads you to becoming a future cosplayer, right? How many of you got a few cosplayers out here? Any of you guys ever make your own doll clothes? Yeah, when you were growing up, did you make doll clothes, or did this just become a thing you just suddenly did?
Yeah, so with the Barbie dolls and the Monster High dolls, I'd like to switch out the clothes, but because they have different body types, I had to make my own clothes. So I take some of the Barbie clothes and then I butcher them.
I like it. Good hand-me-down Barbie fashions for Monster High dolls. What about you guys? Jesus, I don't even remember the original question. Storylines. How much does that impact your play?
Not as much as you would think, because I had a wide assortment of toys: Dragon Ball Z, Power Rangers, Transformers. So I'd like mix and play. I didn't really care what it was. If I had a Power Ranger or a Transformer, obviously they got together and Power Ranger morphed.
Made an awkward Power Ranger and Transformer baby. Oh no, sorry.
Well, the Transformer was a Zord.
So, he used the Transformer.
That is true. I guess if it's a Zord, a Transformer and a Power Ranger could technically make a baby. I don't know how that would work. I guess they assemble it.
Yeah, it made some Zords. Also fine with the Megazord.
All right, Jerry.
So for me, in particular, it was the G.I. Joe. Just recently at another show that I was actually on a panel, and I was moderating for Larry Hama, the guy who created all the backstories for the G.I. Joes, and he was, going off and telling how everything was kind of constructed from people they knew when he was in the Army and the Armed Forces. And so reading the comic and watching the show really, took the play to a different level, because the comic wasn't for kids. I mean, it was marketed to kids, but it was very grown-up stuff, and it was definitely something that was for, kids with more of a capacity for like story and plot and structure and all that. And so our stories were always more intricate, and they really influenced me because, once again, he was growing us as kids into someone who would be able to appreciate art and literature at a different level.
Serve in the military.
That too.
All right, how about you guys? How much did the storylines impact your play? I love the fact that we've got a Care Bear sitting in the back, by the way. Can we give it up for her? Give her a round of applause.
All right.
For the Care Bears. How much did the stories impact your play?
Whenever your toys were tied to like a show, then it would always give them an innate role. Like Optimus Prime would always be the leader in whatever your scenarios were. So I think that the storyline, at least developing the characters for whatever playset you're using, would help create something new and stimulate that sort of thing.
I dig it. How about for anybody else? Anybody else want to share? Maureen, what about for you? Right over there, I'll be on the other side.
So I collected X-Men cards, and I love the comics. And so it wasn't more of a toy; it was more like the cards itself. That was really cool to me.
That's awesome. I like that. Who else had their hand up over here? All right, my friend.
I think as far as like He-Man, it was a little bit different because when you had He-Man released initially, it had a comic book that had a more obscure storyline, but then the Filmation took over. They made more of a concrete storyline. And so the initial release of the figures, it was a little different when they started releasing the ones after Filmation made the animated series. Because then you had Prince Adam. You didn't really have a Prince Adam in the initial series. Skeletor was more obscure in his role, and Hordak was not even mentioned really until much later. So I think it just depends on how they released the story. Was it more concrete at the beginning?
Well, if I remember correctly, for the He-Man, he was like some sort of weird savage person living out in like the deserts of nowhere, and he shows up, and it's a very cool thing. In a way, I almost wish they would have kept it that way because it would have been like a lot more fierce and ferocious when it came to it. Yeah, totally get it. That's really good thought there. But He-Man was so brilliant in the way they combined like mythology and barbarism and technology. Like it's magic and technology working together, and I think that the way it really took a creative mind to kind of make that universe. Because initially, I believe they were making He-Man. They were going to do a Conan the Barbarian toy line, and they couldn't get the rights to it. It's a rated R movie, so totally not appropriate for kids. So totally, definitely something they wanted to make toys out of.
It was the 80s.
Yeah, it was the 80s. Whatever. They really got to doing that in the 90s a lot. But it's such a brilliant. And so many of the conceptual ideas are great, and you talked about G.I. Joe, and G.I. Joe was a great toy line because it was very diverse, and they included everybody. Now, if you look at G.I. Joe, it was very stereotyped. Like, the one Indian guy had like a feather, and Native American guy, he was as stereotyped as could be, but it was still very inclusive, All of the ninjas, are Asian, and it's very.
It was 80s inclusive.
Yes, it was 80s. It was a good example of 80s inclusion, but still a very fun toy line. Really, but as you watch, can you watch the cartoons now, and do they make sense? Are they easy? Do you look at them and go, "What was I thinking playing with this?"
Well, I think for the G.I. Joe, there was more thought out. Same thing with Transformers, but some of the other ones were more sporadic and had sort of different riders every time. And so it would go in different variations, but for sure the G.I. Joe and the Transformers did have a run through that went from the beginning to the end. Even when they changed like the Beast Wars and stuff like that, there was still a connected piece throughout.
All right, I dig it. What about for you guys? Cartoons, comics now, you read them, you watch them. Do you look at it and go, you know what, I totally get why I was into this, or do you look at it and go, man, this is just not as cool as I thought it was as a kid?
So for me, it depends on what we're talking about, really. So something like Gargoyles, you remember that cartoon from Disney back in the day? That still holds up really well today. Storyline's solid. It's really an amazing story. It still feels good right now. But if you look at something like Power Rangers, which I'm a big fan of, so on my podcast, we're right now covering Mighty Morphin and Sentai Gear Ranger. And I gotta tell you, I walked into it a couple of weeks ago watching the entirety of season 1, and there are points where I was like, what is going on here? But at other points, I still thought it was really well done. The characters that would really sold it for me more than the story, because the characters are more believable than the story itself, right? Like, it's easy to imagine a high school kid living their lives and then all of a sudden aliens invade. So that definitely makes sense to me. So it really is. Depends what we're talking about, like which cartoon, which TV show when we're growing up, that'll influence that.
But I think you bring up a great point. For those of you who grew up in the 80s, the toy cartoons were so much different than in the 90s. In the 90s, cartoons really were more story-driven. Yeah. You could have violence, right? But if you watch He-Man, he never really punches anybody in that 1980 series.
G.I. Joe, they shoot at people, but nobody ever gets hit. Nobody's ever like, my leg.
Or if they hit an airplane.
That actually stayed true even in the 90s. If you watch the original Spider-Man 90s cartoon, they weren't allowed to punch people. Like, he wasn't allowed to actually punch someone. That's
Batman punched the crap out of a lot of people.
Batman, maybe, but Spider-Man was not allowed to. Like, that's why you see him throwing random, like, stuff at the bad guys all the time. Like, they get around it.
Or the web shooting.
Yeah, or the web shooting.
Or
that's
like
not popular.
Like in G.I. Joe, whenever they shot the planes down, everybody had a parachute, and everybody made it out of the plane, and everybody landed just fine. Every single person, every single time.
Yeah. It was so different in how they did it. Like even Transformers. I mean, they didn't get destroyed. They're robots, but it wasn't until that movie that any of them ever died. Right?
Well, I mean, there's the movie, and there's Optimus Prime's death. So one time, but yeah.
And they were going to do that with this G.I. Joe movie. They were going to kill off Duke, and after the crowd reaction to Optimus Prime dying, they changed it to where Duke was only injured, and that was a big deal.
It broke our hearts, man. All of us kids in the 80s were like, no, not Prime.
No, Prime is the best. He's so awesome. Yeah, for you guys, any traumatic moments in cartoons that you remember, any storylines that are like, oh man, really? Really, that's crazy. How do you guys feel about the storylines? Were they grown up enough for you in your generation? How about for you, because you're over here, you've been watching in town. How about for you, what was a toy that you loved, and do you feel like it was where you were at as a kid, or could it have been a little bit more grown up?
So I love strawberry shortcake. Nice.
They had some controversial storylines, right?
But I just remember all of the characters and like all the empathy, and I really, as a little girl, could relate to that.
Now, which character in Strawberry Shortcake was your favorite?
Strawberry shortcake.
Of course, Strawberry Shortcake, of course. What about for you guys? Anybody else want to share, kind of where you thought the toy lines were with their story making?
One thing that I did notice from earlier, I just had to get it out there, but whenever you were watching He-Man, it was kind of like how you would actually play with toys, because you would have a Barbarian, you would have He-Man, and then you would also have the Star Wars in there. And so it kind of made it okay to mix up like your high fantasy and your medieval fantasy.
I dig that, yeah, absolutely. And again, I'll go back to that's one thing He-Man really did well, is they mixed that culture, right? They mixed that almost that barbarism, that magic, that religion, and totally mixed it with the technology. And so that is one of the things that made it so cool and so special. Characters that you guys love. Oh, go ahead, what were you going to say?
I had a question for you guys, actually. So I know in the 90s, there was this big revolution, or the mid-90s, where the soccer moms, quote-unquote, would start getting mad at the different TV shows being too violent or too inappropriate for kids. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are in the 80s growing up. Or did you guys face that same problem where the soccer moms would riot and cause stuff like Power Rangers and Gargoyles to get more toned down, or like even Spider-Man?
So I don't know that we did that with our cartoons. It was more the music, the metal, the rap. I mean, that's why they have stickers on them now, right? Not just to sell more records, but to advise parents, because that happened.
The PMRC was very heavy in terms of turning all those things into, oh no, you can't do that. But honestly, in the 80s, a lot of times the cartoons were just kind of whatever. I mean, our parents would say bye, and then we would go out into the street, into the world, and fight, and get punched in the head or whatever, and step on nails, and then come back home when the lights come on the street lights. So yeah.
Yeah, it was different. My mom was all like, "Go play in the woods, get out of here," right? Now my wife's got our kids low jacked.
Yeah, no, I remember back in the day, I mean, it wasn't the 80s, but they did that stuff with 4Kids, like Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff. Yeah. And so it was like, they started changing actual playing cards because they had like demons in them, or like, there was this one part where they were like, oh, I'm gonna kill Kaiba and send him to hell. And then they were like, yo, you can't say that on TV. So then they said, oh, well, we send him to the Shadow Realm. They had to like tone it down.
And yet there's a whole movie called All Dogs Go to Heaven, and let me tell you, that dog does not go to heaven the first time it dies.
Nope.
Yes.
Nope.
But you do bring up a good point about how things got changed in the 90s. Because you guys remember Lord Zed from Power Rangers, right? He was evil, he takes Rita prisoner. Well, half a season later, they're married because parents were complaining that Zed was too scary for kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a metal face with a brain hanging out.
He was just a skeleton face, and that made him very terrifying to kids because
How is Skeletor not scary to kids?
he probably was, but they didn't care in the 80s, right? But in the 90s, there's this huge movement where we couldn't watch certain things because the soccer moms, quote unquote, would decide it's not something they want kids watching. So, I mean, it took 30 years for Power Rangers, up until like last month, for them to actually use the word kill in their franchise. And once in all, if they actually use the word kill and they permanently kill the characters for the first time ever, any other time a character died, they'd come back magically like 2 episodes later, somehow, but this time it actually stuck.
Well,
So I thought that was interesting.
here's the thing with all that. I think kids are prepared for things that are, heavier, that are much more grown up. Not anything crazy or whatever, nothing sexual, but stuff that's like, characters die, things progress, people evolve. And I think kids were prepared for that type of thing. And so much of this censorship that kept it from kids being able to experience that. Because if they read books, I mean, that happened all the time in books, in literature and things that you read. But, in the TV show, there was too much. I just think that a lot of it was overreach and, parents overreacting or looking to make a name for themselves, like some of the folks on the PMRC board with music or other things that happened in the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah, and it's, you guys talk about a lot of how they, I forget what I was going with this. I'm on the spot, hello. So let's move on to our next topic, because I'll come back to this when I remember exactly what I was going to say. But characters that were important to you, heroes. Who were your favorite heroes that you had in play? Maria's thinking hard, man.
I mean, I watched. I just go back to Power Rangers and probably Superman at the time. I watched a lot of Lois and Superman, that super fun 90s TV show. And so I think that's what I ended up doing with my toys was, either recreating Power Rangers or having them fly around and pretending to be Supergirl.
I totally do, and she does an awesome Supergirl cosplay too. Heroes that meant what to you? The toy lines with the heroes. Which heroes were your favorite?
So my favorite heroes growing up would have to be Luke Skywalker, first of all.
Could Luke beat Han if he didn't use Force powers?
No.
No. Okay. Let's be all clear. Yeah.
That's
Han
not
could
gonna
totally
happen.
kick Luke's butt.
Han could kick Luke's butt. But besides Luke, Power Rangers, like you said, Marie. Also, really big fan of Spider-Man, Daredevil growing up. The cartoon in the 90s was really good for that. I liked it a lot. X-Men, Gargoyles, those were like some of the best heroes in my opinion growing up.
Jerry, for you?
Okay, so something we probably glossed over here was the Superpowers or the Super Friends. A lot of those cartoons really meant a lot to
Under
me growing
24
up.
hours, activate.
There you go. And so for me, it was probably the how Superman was always everyone's fan and always wanted to make sure that you came out the best, whether you're a bad guy or a good guy. He was always rooting for you to change or to grow. And then of course Batman, who was the opposite of that, who was like, oh well, I will break your arms, right? And I am the knight, And so that juxtaposition of those two sort of ideals really worked very well in terms of forming who I was as a kid, and I think those two heroes really stood out quite a bit to me.
For you guys, favorite hero, good guy. All right, we got one over here.
So everybody always had this one movie that they watch over and over again as a kid, and mine was Hellboy. And then one Christmas, I got one present, and it was a fully articulated Hellboy action figure, and that was the first time I was ever awestruck by a gift.
That is so. Oh my man, who's your favorite hero?
I grew up with Power Rangers.
I love it. Power Rangers, give a man a fist pump right there. All right, so let me ask you guys: more fun to be the hero or the villain? The villain. Why the villain? Why is the villain more fun? Who said it? All right. Why is the villain more fun than the hero?
Because I like them.
Because you like him. I think we all enjoy being bad, right? You agree with it?
You are Harley Quinn.
I mean, I think anti-hero is a more respectable word.
Okay, I can dig that. What about you guys? More fun being hero or villain?
So at least in the shows I watched in the early 90s, all the villains had the cats.
I'm going to take over the world and pet my kitty.
Dr. Claw from
Dr. Claw.
Inspector Gadget. Yeah. Gotta love that.
Who's your favorite villains? Who are the most colorful, interesting villains to you that you really enjoy?
The most obvious to that one is the Joker, because he's literally colorful and he's just like.
How do you feel about Mr. J?
He's got the biggest personality in Batman.
I can agree with that. But, Batman villains I think are a step above every other villain because they are so colorful and they all have their quirks. Best villains for you guys?
I have to go to Batman villains as well, but Lord Zed was one of the most terrifying things that got nerfed halfway through the season because how terrifying he was. And I had respect for how scary he was in the beginning. I hated when they made him watery and comedy related more. That was not that great.
All right, for me, it has to be Skeletor. Now, mind you, the Joker's terrific, and I love him, and that would be my go-to. I had someone that said it already, but Skeletor, because he was, one part comedy, one part seriousness, and one part, this sort of concept of what evil was and how frail and ridiculous it was whenever the light was shined upon it. And so it really gave this idea of what we were as people, as human beings in this world, and how, if you just shine the light on things that are bad, oftentimes you can see the cracks and the silliness of it, regardless of how bad they were, how the bad things that they did.
Now, one villain that I remember from the 90s that I really loved, David Sanders from Gargoyle. That man can never lose. Even when he loses, he's winning. How can you not want to be him?
Do you guys prefer the villains who are smart, the villains who are crazy, or the villains who are tough?
Depends. I like the smart ones like Sanders, but also I could be persuaded by, again, Lord Zed or somebody that, pure evil.
Okay, Marie, what about for you? Do you like them smart, do you like them strong, or do you like them just crazy?
It depends. I like the ones that actually manage to stump the good guys and make them think more creatively on how to get around them. The ones that can either outsmart them or are stronger than them or whatever. And not just like the little minions that you're like, oh, I can just kick you and that's
What about for you guys? Favorite villains, why? Smart, strong, what are your favorite types of villains? Crazy? You want to kick us off? Since you're hard. Stand up, by the way. Can we get a round of applause for this awesome cosplay right here? Yes. Now, tell us about your favorite villains and why. What kind of villains do you really like? And why do you choose Harley, by the way?
Oh, well, Harley, I've liked her since I was 5, or since I came out of the movie.
So for the past 5 years or so, you've liked Harley. I'm kidding.
But for the villains, I like the kind that make the superheroes kind of think, maybe the villains are right.
So kind of like a Magneto. I kind of take like a Magneto as that kind of villain. He really kind of makes the hero kind of question which side of the line I should be on, right? What about for you guys? What kind of villains do you guys like? All right, my man, what kind of villain do you like?
I like crazy and smart.
Crazy and smart together, so you're a Joker for sure. Okay, all right, very good.
Crazy and smart.
You are your mother's son, I know. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Your mother is both crazy and smart, yes. Anybody else want to share? Oh, we got a Joker in the back. Hey, Joker. Yeah, that's okay. You're in the panel. It's cool. You don't have to look up. Hey. All right. Guys, thoughts? Oh.
Smart and strong like Darth Vader.
Smart and strong like Darth Vader. And he is, Darth Vader, and I gotta say, watching him in the prequels kind of become Vader was so disappointing because he's so cool in those first 3 movies. Like, you didn't mess with him. There wasn't these emotional outbursts. There's a scene where Chewbacca is like freaking out and Boba Fett's about to shoot him in the Empire, right? When they're gonna freeze Han, and Boba's shooting, and Vader's like, put your gun down, right? And we got this, right? So he's always so cool under pressure. And to see that transition from the prequels, it's like, really, this is the guy? This is the guy?
So what do you think about Anakin in the Clone Wars cartoon, where he really, I think, got to shine quite a bit more than the prequel movies?
Again, and let's be honest, Clone Wars was really good, but they had the time to develop character a little bit more. So, one of the things I was kind of going to go to when you guys were talking earlier, and it was slipping my mind, was how the marketing, do you think kids drove the marketing more, or did the marketing drive the kids more? Because when you look at, up until Barbie, they didn't really have fashion dolls for kids, right? And toy companies, toy stores, they didn't want to buy them because they were very feminine, a woman doll, not a baby doll. And yet when they got them into stores, and this was Mattel's doing, before they were ever in stores, they set up marketing on TV. first toys to, really to be on TV. I think at that point Potato Head had been on TV, but that made the girls want them and go to the stores, right, and to buy that. So we have all these groups like you guys were talking about, kind of censoring toys and toy stories and toy lines, but kids were the ones who ultimately decided. I mean, if you look at He-Man Violence, the figures are all half-dressed, right, but they were so popular with the kids. Do kids drive marketing, do you think, or does the marketing drive the need for the toy?
I think that the marketing is what creates and initiates the idea of what the toy is and the desire for it. And then I think the kids grow into it because it's sort of this reciprocative circle where they say, oh, this is the coolest toy in the world. Look what it can do. Look what it can do for you. It makes you happy. Maybe it doesn't say those words, but it shows you the kid like just enjoying themselves and, oh my God, I want to be that happy too. And so it grows this desire in the kid. The kid goes to the parents, I want to buy the toy, and then they get the toy, and then so it sort of continues from there, and it influences their kids. They're like the other kids in the family, the brothers and sisters. Oh yeah, I got this toy, so you got to get. Oh, well, my friend has this toy. I want to get this toy too. So I think it sort of starts there, but it just cycles over and over again to the kids, back to the marketing, to the kids, back to the marketing.
What were the toy commercials you guys liked and were like, oh damn, I gotta have that? Mom! Anything in particular jump out for you guys?
So I mentioned earlier, Monster High, it started out with a doll line, but it didn't do well because they didn't have any purpose. So they came out with a web series, and that's what made kids want them. Like me, I was like, whoa, this is so cool. They have dolls? Like, I need it.
And that's another brilliant line if you look at, and I talk a lot about Barbie because it's such an important toy line because it really kind of started the fashion doll line, right? But if you look at the ones that, Barbie kind of got a little complacent. And then in the 80s, you had gem dolls come up and give them a run for their money. And then Bratz hit came and knocked them on their butts. And then Monster High, right? And so it really kept making those doll lines kind of evolve. And other toy lines are the same way. The next thing's always, in action adventure toys, the next thing is always coming, right? So it really kind of made them. How about for you guys? Toy commercials that really drove you? I'm going to get you right after this guy.
The ones I really love are the R-rated properties into kids, like the RoboCop, Retro. Those are really for adults, but they make toys out of those.
Yeah, they do. And you know what? I think that's another thing. Kids want to be grown-ups, so they're like, I want that grown-up toy, right? I think that's a great point. Yeah. And really, it was in the 80s that they started doing that. Yes, sir.
Hot Wheels.
Hot Wheels. Now, was it different playing with Hot Wheels because you didn't have a built-in story? Was it easier for you to create your own storyline, or was it just all random car crashes?
Action, car crashes.
Love it, my man.
Hot Wheels is all about racing and the car crashes.
So for me, the marketing that ever sold it to me, it was always like I wanted a toy because of how intricate it was, how fun it looked to play with. But the marketing on specifically the Super Soakers, making it look like the brand new Super Soaker 3000, now with 5 strings, high, like that made me actually want to get it. Like I'm not usually affected by marketing, but that one got me day one. They came out with a new one every couple of months, and it was just bigger and better.
Super Soaker 5000. Absolutely, yeah. And they were super, super fun. Oh, I'm being summoned. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, we're all grown now, and we love our toys. What is like the holy grail of toys? Do you guys collect toys now? And what did you find that you love and you're so happy you have now, and what's still out there you're looking for? Who wants to go for it? Ladies first.
I find myself collecting a lot of action figures these days of like my favorite characters from shows, and
the ones Mom wouldn't buy for me. Thanks, Mom.
And I still have stuffed dolls that I can dress up because that's still my favorite thing to do.
Love it. What about for you? Holy grail of toys. What would you really love?
So I never had a dragon sword growing up, and I really wanted one then. And I still really want one now, like the original one from the 90s, not the Legacy or the Hasbro line, but the OC one. So something like that would be really cool to get. Other than that, I don't really have anything else that's like super, I want to still have that now, years later.
All right, so for me, it's two things. One of them I've gotten, one of them I'll probably never get. The one that I've gotten is, because when I was a kid, we didn't have a whole lot of money, so, all the Masters of the Universe, the big play sets, Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain and all that stuff. couldn't afford it. It was too much money. Now, as an adult, I have both of those things. I'm so happy. I walk by my Castle Grayskull, Snake Mountain, and
He likes to
microphone.
point it out when his mom comes to visit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But Mom, there's the Castle Grayskull you couldn't buy me.
Right, because we
I'm
were
doing
poor.
pretty good.
But now we're not poor. It's cool. But the other one is Cat Slayer from the Thundercats. Now again, that thing's like $3,000, and there's no way that anyone can afford it. But I look at it, I'm like, oh, maybe one day, maybe when I win the lottery.
For you guys, something that you absolutely are dying to get, that you wish you had, and something that you're proud of. Anybody want to share? You want to share? All right. What are you dying to get, and what are you proud that you have?
So, I have a larger Monster High collection than I did before, but something that I really want that is a lot harder to get these days is the Barbie Life in the Dreamhouse dolls that was made for the show. They're so pretty, and they're fake lashes, they call to me, but every listing I find for them, they have like gnawed on legs or hands from like dogs, or they're missing something, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna pay $100 to get something that's missing something, so still on the lookout.
So if you guys see any of those dolls, give her a call, all right? Yeah, and you mentioned that, our generation, nobody collected toys. We all said, I'm going to collect these and give them to my kids. Nobody kept their toys, right? Mom sold them at a garage sale, whatever. Dog bit them off, tore them up.
We destroyed them out in the field.
Yeah. But now, like, my kid's like, he's like, I bought this $100 figure. I'm not taking it out of the box. I'm like, if you don't open the box, how do you even know it's there?
So by the time I was a kid, toy collecting was a thing. We had Beanie Babies, which we all thought was going to be worth a lot. My older sister got into...
Yeah, you got Beanie Babies. You were going to be rich.
My older sister had gotten into Star Wars, and she worked at a toy store, so she bought every toy Star Wars figure she could. They were all in a box somewhere that she thought back in the day would be worth something. I think she gave up and opened them and let her son play with them because she realized they're not. And I know my husband wishes he still had all his Star Wars toys from when he was a kid, but he knows he played them into the ground and they wouldn't be worth anything either.
Well, if you come over to Northwest Texas, there's lots of cool Star Wars toys. Just putting that out there, folks. Just putting it out there. 1630, come visit us. For me, like...
Sorry, I just remembered my mom, though, the other half of my story, my mom's a pack rat and actually still does have a lot of the toys I played with. So she still has quite a large My Little Pony collection from the 80s that we had. And so, I mean, you say that, but I feel like there are some families out there who actually did save their rats for their kids.
I love finding those, and this is a true story. Jerry and I recently, he went with me when I bought this big collection of Star Wars, and I told the lady, and she's like, I have these Star Wars toys, and Cabbage Patch, Hot Wheels, and all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'll come check it out, and I'm not thinking a whole lot, She's like, oh, it's going to be in the storage container. I'm thinking it's going to be torn up. We open up the box, and we look at each other, and it's like, oh, like it is this holy grail of stuff, and I'm so tempted to keep everything. One thing that I do have, though, I got at Beaumont Comic-Con last year, and it is a giant Lost in Space robot. Thing's about 2-3 feet high. Amazing piece. I keep thinking, should I bring it and sell it, or should I hold on to it? I haven't decided to sell it yet. It's in my personal collection. But the cool thing about, for me, if I buy the toys and sell the toys, I get to buy more of the toys. Right? And I get to come out here and talk about them with you and have y'all come and see everything that's amazing in our booth. We are getting near our time coming to an end. So you guys, anybody want to share their holy grails of toys before we go? I know you said the Barbies. Did you guys have anything? You got something back here? What do you love to have, and what are you looking for out there?
Since I'm already looking to go with money, Funko Pops. That's right.
Anybody here have Funko Pops? I mean, who doesn't have Funko Pops? Anybody have more than 100 Funko Pops? Yes. Yeah. How many do you think you have?
200, over 200.
Over 200, yeah. I mean, these guys, all these businesses out here, they're like, yeah, we got you covered. Because you can get Funko Pop for everything. That's amazing. You guys have any holy grails?
I don't know if it counts as a toy, but man, you was talking about Thundercats, and I immediately thought about one of my comic shops had like a really big sword, like on a plaque, and I'm like, oh, I got that big boy money. I'm picking up one of those.
It's so nice when you get out and you can make your own money and spend it on stuff that's not super responsible. I love that. So real quick, we're going to do one last line of who we are, where you can find us, and then I'll do a couple of trivia questions. and you guys can win some fabulous, not fabulous, prizes. So one last time, starting down on the end, we'll start with Marie. Tell them again who you are, where they can find you on social media if they want to follow you. Marie's like, oh, whatever, I'm just a
Not word
post.
that I haven't posted anything on Instagram in 6 months.
Marie is also a nerdman in Nerdfest, so if you want to hang out with her there too.
I have Anime Secrets on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We also have a couple of podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and/or wherever you get your podcasts. Anime Declassified, Token Secrets, and Jedi Squadrons. So come check us out if you guys are interested in those kind of spaces. We have a lot of fun every week talking about that stuff.
All right, once again, Eastern Room Funny Book and Vintage Con. We're going to have some flyers here that we're going to pass out in just a second. Also, co-director of NerdCon. It's going to be October 21st for NerdCon. And Eastern Room is going to be August 19th and 20th. And how much does it cost to get into those shows? It costs a whole bunch of nothing. It's free to get into both of the cons, free to park. And we have cosplay contests. There you go. We have cosplay contests. We have all the stuff that everyone. We have guests, comic guests, and media guests. It's going to be a really good time. So make sure you come check us out. And don't forget to check us out on Nerdfest, which is on Facebook. Facebook group, greatest Facebook group of a generation. You know, and make sure you check him out over there at his booth. What's the number again? 1630 Nerdfest, Texas. Bunch of really cool vintage and sorts of stuff that is amazing. So go check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am James Chisholm, and you guys can come over to 1630 and hang out with me. Director of NerdCon, hangs out at Eastern Room Funny Book and Vintage Con, runs Nerdfest as well. We've got flyers. We're going to ask you to do a group photo with us before we all take off. Trivia question to win a fabulous prize, not fabulous. And we'll start off. 1950s fashion doll Barbie was named after who? Who was Barbie named after? All right, hand up.
The daughter of the creator of Barbie Farmer.
That is correct. It was Barbara, the daughter of the creator. Some cool socks. For this amazing cup, it's got a crack in it. Come by my booth, I'll give you another one, because I've got 2 of these. I dropped it on the way. I'm embarrassed to say that, but if you come by my booth, I'll exchange it for you. Anybody, raise your hand. What is knowing half of? Knowing is half of something. What is it? All right, what is it, my man? The battle is correct. The battle is correct. Knowing is half of the battle. All right, and you get this awesome Street Fighter cut. Thank you so much. Hey guys, come gather around the stage, grab some flyers, but let's take a group picture. We love you guys for coming out and being a part of the panel today.